Hey everyone, welcome back to the Happy Family Coach podcast. Today we are going to dive into a subject that hits very close to home for me and probably for majority of you listening, which is parenting after divorce. So not only did I grow up in a divorced home, my parents separated when I was 18, but I've also walked through a divorce myself. I've experienced firsthand how deeply it can impact your family, your children, and your own heart. It deeply impacted me from the inside out. Divorce shakes everything. It shook me to my core. Divorce leaves you feeling like you're rebuilding from the ground up, and not just as a parent, but as a person. So I'll be honest, it wasn't easy, as you can tell. There were plenty of tears, hard days, financially impossible days where I thought, how am I going to keep the lights on? And moments where I even questioned my faith, and I even questioned, was I doing enough for my kids? But of course, because God is sovereign and so amazing, and we are so loved by Him, through it all, He showed up. And that's my promise to you. It's not my promise, it's God's promise that He's going to show up for you as well. He gave me tools, wisdom, and the support I needed to navigate that difficult season. And He's using me through this podcast to share the same tools, wisdom, and support that I needed to help you navigate this difficult season of divorce or post-divorce. And now, looking back, I can actually see, and one day you will be able to do the same. We'll be able to look back and see how God used all of those challenges to shape us and our families for the better. One thing that I know for sure is that while divorce may change a family, changes our family dynamics, it doesn't have to define it, okay? Our kids rely, though, on us for stability, love, and connection, especially in times of upheaval. So today, my amazing Happy Family Coach podcast friends, I want to share some of the practical strategies, lessons, and encouragement that helped me not just survive, but thrive on the other side of divorce. We'll talk about how to create a safe, stable environment for your kids, how to maintain a strong connection with them, and how to trust God to guide you through this new chapter of your parenting journey. So whether you're co-parenting, single parenting, or trying to navigate your kids' emotional reactions, this episode is for you. Go grab that cup of coffee, find a comfortable place to sit, and let's dive in and let's walk this road together. Welcome to the Happy Family Coach podcast, your guide to rewriting the story of your family's legacy. I'm Danielle Alvarez-Greer, here to help you navigate the twists and turns of family life, faith, and personal growth. Get ready for practical tools, spiritual insights, and heartfelt conversations to transform your family dynamic. Welcome to the Happy Family Coach podcast, where real-life challenges meet real solutions. Okay, welcome back. Let's begin by stepping into our children's shoes for a moment, okay? This is something that I did late at night when I couldn't sleep or early in the morning, in the wee hours of the morning when I was contemplating, having anxiety, worrying about what's next, the unknown, this divorce, what is it doing to my children? And it really did help me to just sort of reflect. And what does divorce feel like from their perspective? What did it feel like from my perspective? It was much different. I was 18. So for my children, they were much younger. I would think about that. But I would try to do it. I would try to understand their experience from the best that I could. But by doing that, it really was the first step toward helping them navigate this season in a healthier way. Not that I had all the answers or that I had it all together, but just me trying to think about from their perspective, what were they thinking? For a child, after doing a lot of research now, for a child, divorce can feel like their entire world has been turned upside down, right? Suddenly, the two people they rely on most aren't in the same home anymore, or they're not going to be in the same home anymore. This can create feelings of instability, confusion, and sometimes even guilt if we have a child that somehow feels responsible, like it's their fault. That is a very real feeling or thought perspective that our children might have or take on. Some kids even wonder if the divorce was somehow their fault. Others may fear they'll lose one or both parents entirely. And while they may not say it out loud, those fears and emotions often show up in subtle or sometimes not so subtle ways, like anger, withdrawal, sadness, or even changes in behavior. Maybe they're getting in trouble at school, or they're sort of going and crying all the time, or they're not talking to friends, or they're not engaging in school, they're not doing well in their classwork. For example, I once worked with a family and a boy named Noah. That's not his name. He was 8 years old at the time when his parents divorced. Before the divorce, Noah was this energetic, happy-go-lucky kid who loved playing soccer and hanging out with his friends. But after the divorce, his teacher and soccer coach noticed some really troubling changes. He became withdrawn, he began to avoid his friends, and he even started acting out in frustration during games. So Noah's parents, they were doing their best, but they hadn't realized how much their arguments during the divorce process were impacting his sense of security. So when we sat down to talk, I encouraged his parents to focus on two things: reducing conflict, trying to stay off of that unhappy kid triangle as much as possible, and creating a routine that would help give Noah consistency. So they started working together to co-parent more peacefully and took time to reassure Noah that both of them loved him and would always be there for him, that no one was going away, that he didn't do anything wrong. And so slowly, very slowly but surely, Noah began to trust this new normal. Sad, yes. Different, yes. Hard, yes. But he began to trust the new normal. He started smiling more, re-engaging with his friends, and he began to play soccer with joy again. But let me pause here for a moment, okay? Because I know not every family is able to co-parent well. This was a special case, an extremely special case, where both parents were willing to work together for their child's well-being. I've also worked with families where one or both parents struggled to communicate peacefully or prioritize their child's needs. So if you're in that situation, which is more likely, you're not alone and there's hope, okay? But if both parents are willing to try, I would love to support you through my co-parenting, my family coaching. This is for parents going through a divorce or on the other side of the divorce. Together, we can actually work toward creating a more peaceful dynamic that will benefit your children and help them feel more secure. You can book a session through my website, happyfamilycoach.com, at any time, and I'm happy to speak with you over the phone if you have questions to see if we're a fit. and I'd be honored to walk alongside you in this journey. And by the way, actually, next week's episode is all about co-parenting with your former spouse. Yes, it's possible, okay? In next week's episode, we'll dive into practical tips and strategies to make it work, even when it feels impossible, okay? So be sure to tag that, save it, set an alarm or a reminder, because next week this episode will come out, all right? Co-parenting with your former spouse. So here's the key takeaway for today in this first segment. Kids don't need perfect parents. They need present ones. They need to know, even when everything else is changing, that your love for them is constant. Your job isn't to fix everything or make the divorce disappear. It's to create a sense of safety and consistency that helps them feel secure. So let me ask you a question. How do you think your child is feeling about the divorce? Whether you're going through it, you're on the other side of it. Have they made comments, or have you noticed changes in their behavior? They may be subtle or not so subtle. I want to encourage you to just take a moment to reflect. Here's a simple first step. Maybe you even sit down with your child or children and just acknowledge their feelings. You don't have to have all the answers, okay, moms and dads? A simple statement like, "Sweetie, I know this has been a big change for you, and I'm here to listen to how you feel." But something like that can simply open the door to such powerful, wonderful conversations. Okay, it's not about solving every problem. It's about showing up and letting them know that they're not alone, that they have support, that you're on their team, that you're with them, and you're not going anywhere. All right, now that we've talked about what your child might be feeling, let's move into creating stability in their lives. Stability is like the anchor that keeps a ship steady during a storm. It's what helps your kids feel safe, even when everything around them is changing. So the first way to create stability is through consistent routines. And when I say this, I don't mean rigid, set in stone, because I know obviously we all have busy lives and there's so many things going on, but as best as possible, keeping these routines consistent. This might include just keeping regular bedtimes, meal times, and weekend activities. So for example, if Friday night at your home when you were married before the divorce was always pizza and movie night before the divorce, try to keep that tradition going. Routines remind your kids that while some things have changed, the things that really matter, like time spent together, are still the same. And of course, there will be many opportunities to start new traditions together. Okay, this is something that we eventually begin to do once we settled into our new home, our new routine, our new life post-divorce. This is something that you can do. You can discuss with your children, what are some new routines that we should start together in our new home, in our new family, and invite them, include them into the conversation so that they get to contribute their thoughts, their requests, suggestions, and ideas. Another important aspect of stability is co-parenting with grace. I know this is easier said than done. I have failed, and I have failed more times than I can count. But doing this, especially if there's tension or hurt feelings between you and your former spouse, okay, grace is something that we really have to strive for, because remember, your kids need to see both parents as a source of love and support. Try to communicate respectfully and avoid putting your child in the middle of conflicts. I worked with one couple who created a shared online calendar to coordinate their kids' schedules, right? School activities, plays, after school events, sporting events, award ceremonies, etc., etc. Of course, it wasn't always easy for this couple, these former spouses, right? It wasn't always easy, but it reduced misunderstandings and it gave their kids a sense of unity. So, my final words on this segment about creating stability for your kids: parents, speak words of reassurance over your children. Tell them things like, "This divorce isn't your fault, and both mom and dad love you so much." Kids need to hear that, even if they already know it. When I was growing up, my mom and dad didn't have any emotional regulation skills or healthy relationship tools. And so we didn't have these conversations. And I'm not blaming them. I love my mom and dad dearly, and they did the best they could from the chains, the generational chains from their past lives, from their past childhoods, and all the trauma and heartache they endured in their lifetime. But it would have been amazing to hear things like, "No matter what happens, Danielle, you are still so loved. I knew my mom loved me. I did not so much know that if my dad loved me," right? So it would have, man, that would have been priceless. So amazing to have heard my dad still say that. Those words would have given me a sense of security that I would have then carried with me into adulthood. But fast forward to my 30s, I'm now 48, but my early 30s, and that is when I began to deal with and work on my lack of self-worth and lack of security. So we can save our children, we can spare them a lot of therapy and soul searching later on in life, although that may be part of their plan and their path that God has for them. So we may not want to intervene. But if you are loving, kind, gracious, God-fearing people that aspire to be like Christ, I encourage you to just step in and speak words of reassurance over your kids, please. So, what is one routine or habit that you can create this week to help your child feel more stable? Maybe it's a weekly family dinner or a simple bedtime story at night when you're tucking them into bed. Even the smallest actions can make such a big difference. Okay, stability is crucial, but we're going to keep moving forward because if we're honest, connection is what truly helps our children feel seen, loved, and secure. After a divorce, it's normal for emotional distance to creep in between parents and kids. Maybe you're juggling so many responsibilities that there's little time left for connection. Or maybe your child has started pulling away, unsure of how to express what he or she is feeling. The good news is that with intentionality, you can bridge the gap and deepen your bond with your children. Connection doesn't have to be complicated or perfect. It just has to be consistent. So I've given you a couple of steps. I think there's 3 steps. Yes. Step 1, spend quality time together. One of the best ways to build connection is by spending quality time with your kids. Now, before you start imagining some elaborate trip or expensive outings, let me stop you right there, okay? Connection isn't about the big stuff. It's about the little, everyday moments that show your kids they're a priority. I remember a time when, money was really tight after my divorce, and my electricity was turned off and we had candles. We had candlelight dinner for electricity, and we would take a candle with us up to our bedroom, and we made an adventure out of it. And we spent quality time reading stories as best as we could with the dim lighting, or we made up stories. We would take turns telling a story. Okay. So that's an idea. That was a forced example because I didn't have a choice because my electricity was cut off. I think I got the bill paid the next day or 2 days later. But this quality time that I'm talking about, this could be as simple as a weekly game night where you let the kids pick the game. We liked Stratego, Monopoly, Candyland, Chutes and Ladders, or maybe you go for a walk around the neighborhood or a bike ride. Or even the quality time may be 10 minutes of undivided one-on-one time with each child before bed. I didn't say an hour, I said 10 minutes. The key is your undivided attention. Put the phone down, turn off the TV, and just be present. Here's the second step. Validate their feelings. Another powerful way to connect with your kids is to validate their feelings. Encourage them to talk about what they're experiencing through the divorce, after the divorce, and with the new family dynamics in school, with friends, with friendships, relationships, teachers, schoolwork, whatever it is. Just let them know it's okay to feel sad, angry, confused, lonely, whatever it is. And we can also validate their happy feelings as well. For example, another family I worked with had a son named Ethan, not his name, who was acting out at school, picking fights with classmates and refusing to do his work. His mom was so frustrated, thinking he was just being defiant. But when she finally created space for him to share his feelings, Ethan admitted he was scared about the divorce. He didn't know how things would change or if his parents would still love him the same way. Our kids, they are such storytellers like us, but yet they don't have the big words, or they don't have tools yet to process these emotions. So we have to help them. That one conversation that my client had with her son was a turning point, because her son, probably for the first time in a long time, felt heard, and his mom was able to reassure him. Over time, his behavior started to improve because he wasn't carrying all that fear and confusion by himself anymore. His mom was helping him, supporting him, walking alongside him, giving him tools. All right, step 3, model emotional resilience. Kids are always watching us, right? We all know that. Kids are always watching us, even when we don't realize it. One of the most impactful things that we can do is model emotional resilience for them. Be honest about your feelings in an age-appropriate way, of course. But if you're having a hard day and they pick up on that, don't lie. Don't say no. Don't try to cover it up. Be honest. For example, you might say something like, "I'm feeling sad today, but I know we're going to get through this together." Or, "I'm feeling a little overwhelmed, so I'm going to take a few deep breaths and pray." Or, "I'm really not having an easy time with my emotions today. I need to go to bed early tonight. I think we're going to do an early bedtime routine tonight." By doing this, we show our kids that it's okay to have big feelings, and more importantly, that there are healthy ways to process and work through them. Here's the beauty of all of these things. When you model resilience, you're teaching your kids that they can handle their emotions too. You're showing them that no matter how hard things get, they're not alone. And that's a lesson they'll carry with them for the rest of their lives. So here's my little challenge for you this week. I want you to set aside 10 minutes of one-on-one time with your child. If you have more than one child, you can adjust it, but 10 minutes should be sufficient. Ask them how they're feeling, and then I want you to just listen. We're listening to understand. We're not listening to respond. We're simply listening. We're not trying to prepare an answer or have the correct answer or try to fix it, okay? Don't try to fix or solve anything. Just be present and let them share. You might be surprised by what they open up about, and you might be surprised about how much closer you feel with your children afterward. Connection isn't about being a perfect parent. I cannot reiterate that more strongly enough, right? It's not about being a perfect parent. It's about showing up, even in the small moments, and letting your child know they're loved, seen, and valued. That's the foundation for a bond that can withstand any challenge, I promise. All right, the next segment I've titled The Power of Words and Actions. And this really hit home for me because my children had to bring this to my attention. They admonished me, but we want to protect our child's heart and we want to set a godly example. So I want to take this moment to discuss something incredibly important when it comes to parenting after divorce. This might be a little hard to hear. It was hard for me to hear, but I share it with love, grace, and the deep desire to see your family heal and thrive. Okay, here it is. We as parents, divorced parents, we must never, ever badmouth, complain about, vent, or speak ill of our former spouse in front of our children. Okay? We must never, ever badmouth, complain about, vent, or speak ill of our former spouse in front of our children. And if you do, which I have, quickly go ask for forgiveness, repent, because they need to see you model that as well. Again, you're not perfect. We will mess up. But we really need to strive to not do this. But I get it, okay? Divorce is hard. You might feel hurt. You might be feeling angry or even betrayed. I don't know what your situation or circumstances are for why you got divorced. But our kids should never carry the weight of our emotions about our former spouse. Children are naturally wired to love both parents. And when they hear us speaking negatively about the other, it puts them in this impossible position. They may feel like they have to choose sides, or worse, like they're being torn in two. One of the most damaging things we can do after divorce is to make our kids our confidants or surrogate spouses. And by that, I mean we use our children to vent to complain about. We get on the unhappy kid triangle. We play the helpless baby role to complain about how mean or poorly our former spouses are treating us. And we want them to make us feel better. I know we don't do this on purpose. Our intention is not to do this to them, right? We don't want to damage our kids. But a lot of times we'll find ourselves in this position. It's a trap. My children experience this with with my former spouse, with their father. I think to this day, they're now 22 and 18. And to this day, he still has nothing but nasty, unkind, unloving things to say about me. And fortunately, I've had many conversations with my children since they were young. And I've explained, I'm so sorry that daddy feels like he has to vent to you or to make you his confidant. That's not your responsibility. And I've encouraged them to set boundaries with him, to please ask him not to share, not to speak ugly about me, their mom. And they've actually done this on multiple occasions. Unfortunately, my former husband is stubborn. Like me, I can be stubborn at times. And this is an area in which I really have to extend a lot of grace. But I've allowed my children to handle that. I've given them the okay to set boundaries with him and to ask him to please stop. So they've gotten good at just redirecting the conversation. When he gets in his little mode, they'll just redirect the conversation. Oh, Dad, I've asked you to stop. Please stop talking about Mom. I don't really enjoy this. I don't want to be at dinner with you if you're going to continue to do this. And then he'll get better, and then he'll slowly slip back in. However, my responsibility as their mom, who is the one who believes in Jesus, the one who has been saved by Jesus because I'm a sinner, I have to model something different. And so, although there are times that I would like to say something unkind and unloving about their dad, especially when they come to me saying, Dad said this or said that, so annoying. My flesh wants to defend them, wants to defend myself, and I want to bash their dad. But I have the Holy Spirit, and it takes a lot of strength and the power of the Holy Spirit to help me refrain from speaking ill will, bad-mouthing, complaining about my former husband, their dad. So instead of bad-mouthing, complaining about, venting about, speaking ill about our former spouses, this is what our kids should see us doing instead, right? Here's a better alternative. Let your children see you praying for your former spouse. Yes, I know it seems impossible, but nothing is impossible, right? With Jesus, and we have the Holy Spirit in us. But we want our children to see us extending grace, even and especially when it's hard. Let them see us modeling forgiveness and loving from afar. Now, hear me when I say this. Praying for and extending grace to your former spouse does not mean tolerating harmful behavior. If your former spouse is being mean, hurtful, or harmful in any way, you absolutely have a responsibility, moms and dads, to protect your kids and yourself. But you can do that while still modeling Christ-like behavior. And we do that by, sometimes we have to set and hold boundaries. Part of setting a good example for our kids after divorce is learning how to set and hold firm boundaries. Boundaries are not about punishment. They're about clarity, safety, and respect. For example, if your former spouse speaks to you disrespectfully, especially in front of your children, you can calmly say, I want to have a productive conversation for the sake of our children, but I need us to speak respectfully to each other. And then if the behavior continues, you can simply step away from the conversation and try to revisit it later. Boundaries also mean protecting your kids from being drawn into adult conflict. So if your former spouse tries to involve them in disputes or uses them as messengers, like mine did, it's okay to say to your former spouse, I don't want our child to feel stuck in the middle. Let's communicate directly about this instead. So here's why this matters. When you choose to speak kindly, set healthy boundaries, and show grace, you're not just protecting your child's heart, you're showing them what it looks like to live out biblical principles, even in hard situations. You're teaching them that while relationships can be super messy, they don't have to be destructive. Let me remind you of this truth, okay? God sees your effort. He sees the way you're trying to honor him and the way you navigate these challenges. And he is faithful to bring healing and restoration in ways you cannot possibly even imagine. I promise. It took time, but my children eventually were able to see that the things that their dad was saying about me were not truthful. They were lies. They were able to see my character They were able to see my words matched my actions, and we were able to be restored and relationships healed because of God's faithfulness. Here's another reflection for you this week. Ask yourself, how am I speaking about my former spouse in front of my kids? What example am I setting with my words and actions? If you find areas where you need to grow, please don't be discouraged. Take it to God in prayer. Ask Him for the strength to show grace, the wisdom to set boundaries, and the courage to protect your child's heart. Because the way you handle this season will leave a lasting impact, not just on your kids, but on the legacy of love and faith you're building for your family. Okay. Segment 5, our last segment, trusting God with the journey. Parenting after divorce is hard, plain and simple, but it's also an opportunity to trust God in a much deeper way. The first thing I want to say is this: give yourself grace. You're going to have good days and you're going to have bad days, and that's okay. You're not a perfect parent, but you are the parent your child needs. And God's grace is sufficient for you. Spend time in prayer. Pray for your kids. Pray over them. Pray for yourself and even for your co-parent, your former spouse. Isaiah 41:10 says, "Do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God." Moms and dads, when you pray that over your family, you're reminding yourself that God is with you in this journey, every step of the way. And finally, focus on the long game. The seeds you plant now, through stability, connection, and love, will bear much fruit in the future. I'm working with a single mom of 2 boys who has felt on some days, she has good days and she has bad days, but she has felt that she was failing every day. And we've been working together now for probably almost 2 years. And her boys just tell me when we're together and tell her, "Mom, you are a rock star. You are our rock." During when we were going through the divorce, some of the hardest times of our lives. And that, they are not teens yet, but that is something, the long-term impact of her faithful parenting. And it's only going to get better. They love her. And yes, she makes mistakes. And no, she's not perfect. But her boys can see her character. They see she's trying. They see how she really tries hard to not speak ill or badmouth their father. And she has Jesus in her. She has the Holy Spirit in her. And it's just been so beautiful to watch this family, their relationship, the restoration and the healing that is taking place. It's still taking place currently. So I want you, my parents and listeners, to spend a few minutes today praying over your kids and asking God for wisdom and peace in your parenting. Trust that He's working, even when you can't see it. Divorce may change your family, but it doesn't have to define it. By creating stability, building connection, and trusting God, you're giving your kids the foundation they need to thrive. If this episode encouraged you in any way, I'd love to hear your story. Please join my Facebook group, the Happy Family Coach podcast community, where you can find other listeners who are in the same journey, are walking the same path as you. Or you can DM me on Instagram at the Happy Family Coach, or leave a review on your favorite podcast platform, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You can also go grab your very own Happy Kid Toolkit to help you and your family navigate these challenges with practical tools. The link to purchase a Happy Kid Toolkit is in the show notes, or you can go to happykidtoolkit.com to purchase your toolkit. Thank you so much for listening to the Happy Family Coach podcast. Remember, God is with you in this journey, and He's equipping you to lead your family well with love and grace. Until next time, God bless you all.